Ladies and gentlemen, Psalms 27, 5 and 6 says, In the time of trouble, the Lord shall hide me in his pavilion, in the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me, and he shall set me upon a rock. And then my head shall be lifted above my enemies round about me, and therefore I will offer in his tabernacle sacrifices of joy, and I will sing, yes, I will sing praises unto the Lord. And this is such a befitting piece of scripture for what I'm about to say. Now, I said I wasn't going to talk too much more about Justice League, but I do have to wrap up the final trailer, the breakdowns. But other than that, I'm not doing anything else on Justice League. And unless Wonder Woman breaks the record for the highest grossing superhero origin film, I'm not going to say anything about Wonder Woman either. Okay? But I just had to go into this because it's a hot topic. So, Abraham Reisman, he's a guy that put out an article from Vulture which said DC rethinks its universe, which is not true at all. DC's not rethinking its universe. DC is doing what its plan has always been all along. And that's Warner Brothers DC when it comes to the extended universe, right? Which, by the way, this is just for you guys to know. This article back in 2015, July 26, 2015, by Jeremy Owens, attributes the name DCEU to Zack Snyder. Okay? For those of you who thought that this was something that a journalist said, in this particular article where Batman v Superman was being featured on Empire magazine, Zack Snyder is being interviewed, and this is what this guy covered. Now, it's not directly what Zack Snyder said, but still nonetheless. Listen, Batman and Superman aren't the only thing on Snyder's mind at the moment. Once he finishes his work on that, he'll soon begin on his next blockbuster, Justice League. Snyder seems to be at the head of DC's movie universe, which Snyder calls the DC Extended Universe, but he won't be in control of every single movie to come out of it. Now, this is obviously Owens who is saying that this is what Snyder says. Now, I remember in a video somewhere online, I can't find it right now, that Zack Snyder was actually calling it the DC Extended Universe. It was actually coined by Zack Snyder. It wasn't by a reporter, as erroneously this guy here, Abraham Reisman, claims it is. Again, it is what it is. But until I find that, I don't have absolute concrete evidence. You have to go with Adam Reisman versus this guy here, Owens. Okay, his name is Jeremy Owens. So until then, it's still a he say, right? But I'll get concrete information on that. But this is the thing I wanted to say, that Mr. Reisman, he comes out there and he says how DC's rethinking its universe, is going in a different direction. You know that the director of DC Films, which is Diane Nielsen, she said that Zack Snyder was actually going in a different direction to what they were doing. But he penned it in such a way that it sounded as if they were not approving of what he was doing, and neither was Jeff Johns. And he also talked about Jeff Johns being isolated and excluded and on the boundary of the creative process that Warner Brothers was putting together with the team of Rovin and Berg and Snyders and even Nolan and Goyer, okay? And then to a lesser extent, Terrio. And that was the furthest from the truth. Now, yes, Jeff Johns wasn't very successful with Green Lantern, where they were trying to keep it, dedicated to, the comic book versions to some degree, and keep it with humor and these kinds of things. And they say that Jeff Johns was critiquing that Man of Steel didn't have that kind of humor. But here's the thing that really gets me. They're saying that, DC movies are going to be back on track because they're going to be more like how the DC Rebirth series is and how the DC TV shows are, where people accept those much more. Here's the thing that really bothers me. When they say it's not like in line with Zack Snyder's vision, not in line with DC Entertainment and their comics. That's ridiculous. The first thing I want to say is, hee ha ha and likeness doesn't have to be, because DC has proven that hee ha ha doesn't have to be in all their movies. Christopher Nolan doesn't have a hee ha ha movie. Alright? His series was serious. Smallville was a television series which was serious. There wasn't hee ha ha moments. So, that's the first point. The second point is that yes, the current universe that's on television, alright, the DC TV universe, which I can't remember what its exact name is, you guys know what it is. Yes, they have more levity, it's much more funnier. This guy is claiming that the TV Superman, he's a better Superman than Henry Cavill's Superman. At least people receive him more. By the way, television ratings are not that high for those particular DC comic book television series right now. But then again, we have Gotham right now. And Gotham and Arrow are serious. They're very serious in tone. They're not hee hee ha ha. So, once again, I'm not too sure what this guy is talking about. But he goes on to say that Zack Snyder's vision wasn't in line. And then he had to go and correct it. And he actually said this. That was actually a quote that didn't show up in the finished piece, his Vulture piece, showing again he was making his own narrative. That Diane Nielsen gave me. It was to the effect that we are a director-driven place, and Zack Snyder had a vision that didn't necessarily sync up with what our vision of these characters is, but we respect that he wanted to go for that, and that's part of our philosophy. So he never put that in his article, showing his bias and how much he wanted to denigrate what Zack Snyder was doing. Let me show you something else. Christopher Nolan's vision wasn't lining up with DC Entertainment. Okay? A number of movies that came out didn't line up with what DC has in mind for their characters. Alright? Doesn't mean that because of that, those movies weren't good. People love Christopher Nolan's movies. It doesn't line up with the comic book movies. It doesn't. It doesn't line up with DC's comics. And it wasn't hee hee ha ha. So it's these kinds of things. Now I know Dave the Film Junkie covered this topic. I know Film Gov covered this topic. But I'm just adding my little piece to the equation. Think about this. How many Marvel characters, name them, are actually as how the comic books in Marvel portray them? Thor. They're going with Thor Ragnarok as a completely divorced, removed version of Thor from the comic books. Spider-Man Homecoming recently has moved completely away from the origins of Spider-Man that we know. No longer does he have Spidey sense. Now he's linked to the Avengers and Tony Stark's. Think about his origin, how different it is. Think about Captain America, Civil War, and Captain America, the Winter Soldier, how they've removed themselves completely and modernized the character from what it previously was. So, I am supremely amazed at how the hypocrisy in this industry is. I am supremely amazed at that. That you would turn on Zack Snyder and say, oh, he doesn't stay in line with what DC Entertainment and DC Films vision is. You know, I'm not talking about but he's trying to paint this picture, this Reisman guy, this Weasel guy. He's trying to paint this picture that Zack Snyder, you know, he's going against the grain and he's not really doing things. And making it sound like Jeff Johns wasn't in support of Zack Snyder and what Zack Snyder was doing. Because what happened was Jeff Johns, he failed with Green Lantern. They failed in their depiction. And also even Superman, the previous incarnation of Superman that critics loved and that DC endorsed because it seemed to fall in line with the Christopher Reeve Superman that was a huge box office flop. Zack Snyder and Christopher Nolan and David Goyer went in a different direction with Man of Steel. Okay? And that direction carried on into Batman v Superman. And none of those movies financially flopped. Critically, they flopped because the critics didn't get it. Because the critics didn't get it. Pretty much that's it. You know, they wanted what they wanted to see. And they were the ones that tainted the water for the general audience. Okay? And the general audience received the film. Some of them weren't as hyped for the films. But general audiences received the films and they really enjoyed the films because the films presented something they had never thought about or seen before. And that's what roped me into the DCEU to start with. So it's really amazing to hear these people speak as if this narrative is a true narrative when it's very, very false. Clearly, the DCEU is going to continue to be interconnected. But because they're going to be dealing with individual stories of the Flash and of Aquaman and so on, we don't expect to see Superman showing up in those films. We don't expect what Marvel is doing with their characters. We don't expect that. Film Gov covered this. Even David the Film Junkie covered this. You know, and shout out to you guys, man. Keep on holding down the fort. But that's all I wanted to say on this issue because I thought there's so many Marvel films that, you know, do exactly what the DCEU is not doing. But yet the DCEU is being called, oh, we have production issues and blah blah blah, and all this negative PR that the media is doing. It's not Warner Bros. Doing this. This is negative PR that the media is doing. They did the same thing for Wonder Woman. Oh, we heard that Wonder Woman was going to be a box office flop and it's going to be terrible and it's a horrible film. We heard all of that, and then Wonder Woman turned out to be a great film. All right, and I am here as a DC fan to rebut these lies out here, and I will stand for the DCEU. If the DCEU messes up, I'll let you know they messed up, because I'm one of those guys. I'm an honest dude. If they mess up, I'm going to tell you they messed up. But at present, I haven't seen things that they messed up with. I've only seen creative visions of creative directors. Even Suicide Squad. I didn't think they messed up Suicide Squad. I thought that's what Suicide Squad is. I thought the movie, anybody who's read a Suicide Squad comic from the 80s up to the present time, that's Suicide Squad. You know? So I don't really have a problem with any of the DCEU movies. Me personally. Now I do understand that Warner Brothers wants as big a positive reception for their films as possible so they can make good money. I get it. So I'm not mad at Warner Brothers, but for me personally, I am enjoying the DCEU, and I hope they continue along the lines they're going at. You know what I'm saying? And I think they are. And I think everybody's on board. Jeff Johns is on board. I'm so happy. There's a couple of things people don't understand. I'm so happy Jeff Johns is on board. Okay, Jeff Johns has been there from the beginning of the DCEU with Zack Snyder. He's been riding with Zack. He's been defending Zack for the longest while. And let me tell you something. Zack Snyder could not have a successful Man of Steel film and a financially successful Batman v Superman film. Those films would have flopped if Jeff Johns wasn't on board with them. If Jeff Johns wasn't playing as a team player, those films would have flopped. I'm talking about financially. They'd have been dead in the water, because the kind of vitriol against Zack Snyder that came because he was associated with these films, and even now the still attempted quelled vitriol, because they know they don't really have a leg to stand on. They know these films are going to be financially successful regardless of what they do. Critics can bash Justice League how much they want, but just remember something, critics. When you bash Justice League, just remember there'll be a lashback on you. And rightfully so, because the people are beginning to realize that the DCEU has good movies. Alright? That's why all the DCEU movies have been financially successful. People are still scratching their heads wondering why Suicide Squad is a bad movie. And by the way, to me, the theatrical release was better than the extended cut. Okay? I hold to that. So, I enjoyed Suicide Squad. I enjoyed all the movies. But now other people are joining me and seeing the virtue in these movies. Alright? And every time Marvel comes, I don't want to disrespect Marvel, so I'm on DC. Alright? I'm still going to go see Thor Ragnarok. I still got to go see, what's that thing? Blade Runner 2049. But suffice it to say, I'm not going to bash Marvel. Marvel is what they are. Okay? And they're doing a hell of a job with what they're doing. So I'm not going to bash them. You see, that's the difference between me and other people. I'm not here to bash movies and beat them down like some of these detractors and haters out here. Okay? Who say, oh, we really love DC. No, you don't love DC. I'm not even passionate about Marvel like that. But I don't bash Marvel. And I tell you when it's a good movie. Because I judge movies on what they're bringing to the table. I don't judge movies on my hate for a director or on my bias towards another set of movies. No, I won't do that. I won't do that. And I'm pumped. I'm pumped for Black Panther next year as well. Looks like a good movie as well. So that's all I got to say about movies, guys. You know we on a love scene, but you know I got to defend. I got to defend the DCEU, and I got to defend Zack Snyder when I see unfair articles about this dude. It's not right. It's wrong what these people are doing. And Joss Whedon, he knows how brilliant Zack Snyder is. Even James Cameron, who has been saying some really stupid things of late, he understands the virtue in what Zack is bringing to the table. Okay? So, I just don't want to hear these detractors and these haters who are just blindly hating on a film And they don't even know why they're hating on the film. You know what I'm saying? I'm hoping that this trilogy that Zack Snyder puts down will be something that people 30, 40 years into the future will look back at and say, God, this was great. That's what I think. Because I don't think anybody remembers Captain America Civil War. But I'm sure everybody remembers Batman v Superman. You guys have a great one.